tomorrow. Soccer and football. It's gonna be absolutely amazing. I got something lined up for us, by the way. I wanted to listen to this USA versus England preview from Allocation Disorder. Give us a little better idea.
3, 2, 1. Welcome to Allocation Disorder. I am Sam Stasical, joined as always by my friend and colleague Paul Tenorio. Paul, we are feeling much fresher today, I would say, than the last time we first.
As a fan, so
Let's
that
go.
was just fun.
Like
to
a
not,
decade plus,
yeah,
apparently.
Yeah,
by
I think
the
it's
way.
been since like 2006 or something like that. So, yeah, it was just
Almost
cool
2
to.
decades.
It was cool to just go and like not have an assignment and just kind of enjoy. And I didn't have any Bud Zero, but I had a good time. That's probably the one thing I didn't check off the list.
There was a guy drinking Bud Zero while wearing a giant donkey costume,
Yes.
which was incredible.
Real commitment there. No, it was fun, and it was cool just to kind of. Also, I think we got a good taste of the experience that fans have in terms of getting to stadiums, getting out of stadiums. There was a metro station there. There was a cab stand. We
haven't talked about the ticketing issue that everyone is having, where the app wasn't working, and we had to go find the ticket resolution center and all of that.
Also,
once we got to the
bathroom issue, they didn't have bathrooms on the walk there. They didn't have bathrooms that were clearly marked outside of the stadium, and that is not ideal.
Less than ideal. But, that's something that I would say is not that unusual for stadiums, even in our part of the world, back home. But overall, a very cool experience. And that moment when Memo Ochoa made that save on the penalty kick was a very, very cool,
doesn't sound like a very cool experience.
Emotional experience. The Mexico anthem also.
Emotional experience,
was
yes.
pretty cool.
Yeah, you're the anthem
game,
king right now.
I'm
love
not so
anthems,
sure that
man.
You're getting your socials
shit
going.
Sucks.
With your
Yeah,
win.
we're
I
seeing
think
everything
I think
else.
2 of my top tweets of all time. Maybe my 2 top.
We're seeing everything else, all these other pictures from the World Cup, and it's just abysmal conditions there that these fans are even having to deal with. I'm not sold.
Half wasn't as bad as I thought it was.
Yeah.
I felt like the U.S. still created some moments in transition that could have been goals, could have been better moments, but
Yes.
they were in the game. It wasn't like they were like chasing the game the whole time in the
No.
second half.
I thought
And really, for me, again,
first half was their better half, for
Wales,
sure.
outside of the 2 headers that came back to back in the 64th and 65th minutes, I didn't feel like Wales was that dangerous at all watching it back today.
Not really.
So for me, I thought that's why I still feel like it was a disappointing draw for the U.S. They had a 1-0 lead till the 80th minute. They had multiple chances to go up 2-0, both at the end of the first half and in the second half in those transition moments as the game opened up. They weren't able to do it. And then obviously to give up a penalty the way they did was super disappointing. But I thought, look, this U.S. team in that game, I thought overall was the better team, like on the overall side of things. Like I don't think it was like way better than Wales, but watching it back, I felt like you could definitely say the U.S. will feel like they should have won that game.
I would agree with that. And just to kind of peel back the curtain here a little bit, when you're covering these games as a writer, a lot of times during the match, you're writing a little bit to try and file your story as quickly as possible after the final whistle and after the press conferences and availability. And so both Paul and I, during the second half, were pretty busy writing. And so we missed a little bit of how things were shaking out. And I think for me anyway, Paul, like my impression of the second half changed quite a bit on the second watch. I thought initially that Wales were kind of, I think in control is the wrong way to phrase it, but they had sort of tilted the field a little bit. It was definitely different than the first half. Don't get me wrong, bringing Kiefer Moore on. But the influence of having that target striker and the amount of long balls that they played into him and the amount of even breaks or opportunities that they got off of that, it was fewer than I realized.
Yeah, they didn't play as well.
And I think
as
the U.S. it wasn't as dominant.
The Wales had a good second half, not a great second half, but USA were still right there. They had a puncher's chance to still do damage. Wales was definitely like the better second half team. but they weren't, they weren't like busting down the doors. And we talked about this on our chat with DPG and with Toke about this earlier in the week. It just, Wales weren't super dangerous. USA were dealing with it. And really that penalty was a really bad mistake, because without that penalty, Wales isn't tying this ball game.
And if you want to call it that, they didn't have as much of the ball.
They just weren't that dangerous, even in the second half. Wales, I'm talking about.
That's what it was. That's what it was. They went from a first half of constantly being on the ball to a second half where it was way more in transition.
Yeah, it was just an open game. It was out there. And the U.S., to your point, you mentioned this, they did have transition opportunities. There's been a lot of discourse about that on the internet. About the failure to take advantage of some of those opportunities.
It's their first World Cup.
We both have some thoughts on that. I'll kick it to you.
It's their first World Cup, boys.
I don't know, man. I mean, I kind of laugh because we hear from fans all the time about how good this national team is, how good these players are, and how Greg Berhalter's holding them back.
Are you going to get mad at fans here, Paul?
No, it's just like you can't have it both ways. You can't have it both ways. Like, you can't blame the coach for everything. And when we watched these moments back, there were multiple moments where they got into good spots, they were in good positions, and they didn't execute.
They didn't execute.
Like,
the players didn't execute. I think Greg Berhalter set them up for success, guys.
Thierry Henry, where he's talking about
he just did
Barcelona under Pep Guardiola, and Pep's kind of idea was like, you get the ball up to the final third of the pitch, and then he trusts his team to finish the job in the only area of the field that can't be planned for. Now, it's a lot easier to trust to get the job done at Barcelona when you
when you got those top two players for sure, easily.
Guys. But the idea is, for me, is similar in that you put the players in a position to get into those transition moments, to get into the positions that they were, where the transition was they were in the right spots, and then little things were going wrong. Like, there was one.
They were making things happen, and Wales was strong enough to play good defense. USA definitely were set up for success. I feel like Greg Berhalter's tactics were playing off. We're talking about identities. And what is the USA's identity? Well, I think they had a developing identity. Same thing with Canada. They have a developed identity, and it just didn't work out for them today. Meanwhile, Mexico, as we discussed, didn't really seem to have an identity, identityless. So we're going to be seeing a lot from these three teams over the next two games. I think Mexico was going to stay identityless throughout. I think USA is forging into an identity before our eyes, and we already has some of the USA identity in it, which was, that blue collar, hard work, gonna run you to death team. They got to bring that as well as the skill, and if they could do that, that's going to be next level. And meanwhile, Canada, I don't know too much about Canada's identity, but I did hear from Canada people saying that they played with an identity and it just didn't work out. And that penalty kick that Alphonso Davies, I think, missed, damn, I wish he buried it. That really changes the game. You got to take those moments. They were gifted that. And they also may have been denied another penalty that they maybe ought to have. I'm talking about Canada, of course.
That springs to mind right away of the attack coming up the left side. Anthony Robinson, Pulisic plays it out wide left to Robinson, continues his run. It's a simple cutback pass from Robinson back to Pulisic.
Just missed it.
Who's open at the top of the box, and he just misplays the ball. There's the one that came up the right side where there was, I don't remember who crossed it, but the cross went all the way across the box to Christian Pulisic. Right in his stride. Incredible tackle from the Welsh defender to break that up. I mean, there were moments where Christian Pulisic had chances to turn and run at players and maybe play an early ball that he didn't, or he chose to take the space and then couldn't complete the move. This isn't, and I saw people commenting on Twitter that this is a system problem. It confuses me so much, the idea that that's a system.
It's not, because the system,
there's a lot of people
quote unquote,
talking out of their ass.
The system, it was an open game and it's
fun to
transition
talk out of your
moments.
ass.
It's not even really a systemic thing,
especially on Twitter.
but they were getting the U.S. was getting into
it's
good
a lot harder to
positions.
see if
They
these
just
people
weren't
have been
delivering.
wiping.
They weren't executing on the final ball or the final ball before the final ball in a lot of cases. There was one moment that got highlighted a lot where Pulisic received the ball in space right in the middle of the field and chose to drive forward. He had Tim Weah.
I know what you're talking about.
on
I
the
remember that
outside, and
moment.
he should have played that ball out to Tim Weah.
He was
There's
wide
a little bit of
open.
context. I think that the video
But
maybe missed.
maybe
or the
you didn't
clip
see him.
missed.
It wasn't the clip. It was a freeze frame.
Yeah.
The
Yes.
freeze frame made it look like he had his
Freeze
hips
frame
wide
makes
open and ready to
everything
hit a right-footed pass.
changes.
That
Now,
was him receiving
He
the ball.
still should have hit
Yes.
it, in my opinion.
Because it was open. It was there.
But
It was obviously
you know, I
there.
think for the most part, for me, Paul, Pulisic was not like that bad. I didn't think the final ball was lacking at times, but a lot of this discussion too is erasing Wales for me. They had a ton of numbers back.
Right.
They made it really difficult. They were good at getting
Wales
back in
had to change
transition
the way
and
they
getting
wanted
guys
to
into
play.
the box, picking up markers.
That first half.
Sorry, we've got some construction going.
Wales had to change the way they wanted to play for that first half. They did not play, and as soon as they realized that they tucked in and they were dealing with it, and even when they were dealing with it, you still felt that American goal was coming. That's how it felt.
Going on here in Qatar. There is no avoiding this all around Doha. Things are still being built. We're a few days into the World Cup, so just bear with us. I don't know if you can hear it or not, but if you
Oh
can,
wow,
apologies.
things still being built. That's
Pulisic,
no
yeah,
surprise.
he
Happens
was
at
missing on the final
Olympics,
ball a
World
few
Cups.
times. No doubt about it. I'm sure he would love to have a few of those opportunities back.
I'm sure.
But Wales did a good job of
Might get
closing
another
things down
chance.
and making it difficult. And I think that needs to be brought into this
Wales is a
discussion little
good
bit more than
team.
it has been as well.
I will
Wales
say, like,
is a good
honestly,
team.
watching that game back again, looking at the influence in the first half and in the second half, like, I think for the most part, like, there were more often than not, you got Christian Pulisic in positions where you could get him the ball in good spaces, and there were a number of times they did get him the ball there. I thought actually in the first half there were a few times where he got a little bit too crowded by his teammates or by the way Wales was defending. He couldn't really find the ball in the pockets of space.
I thought he was finding
wanted
plenty
to,
of space
and
sometimes, but there were those moments where you're talking about, Paul. I know
thought
what you mean.
that
I know what you
kind of
mean.
created some issues with the shape on the left side.
Yeah.
But in the second half,
You think
when
that
things started to
Christian
open
maybe
up,
caused that?
He was on the ball in space
So-
quite a few times.
And they just didn't execute.
Like you're saying, like those guys were crowding him. Maybe Christian's crowding them. Maybe it's the opposite. I don't know. Just idea. Something to work with. And maybe Christian just got to back up a step or something, or maybe they have to move aside a step, like you're saying too. Maybe it's a little bit of both. I wonder.
Execute as a team like they should have. The first half, actually, towards the end, after the goal, and we were both saying this in the moment, Pulisic was kind of like, all right, feed me. I'm feeling this.
He was feeling it.
And the U.S. did not do a good enough job of that.
Yeah, there was a sequence where, for me, what it was is that Christian Pulisic plays for a team that has won a Champions League, that is often, a lot of times, has been the better team on the field when they're playing, different opponents, and they
Wow.
understand
Christian
how to
Pulisic
kind of
has won a
seize the
Champions
momentum
League.
and
They go for the
and,
jugular.
Yeah, they go for the jugular. And after that goal, Pulisic was, at one point waved his arms up at the fans. Like, he was fired up. He was ready to go. And he was trying to get more vertical. He wanted to go more direct. And there was a moment where he kind of peeled off a back shoulder of a defender and was looking for a vertical ball to come. I think the first time was from Tyler Adams.
Ooh.
And the pass didn't come, and he kind of looped his run back around and started again. There was a ton of space in behind the back line. The run was on, the
And
pass
nobody
was on,
found it.
and it didn't come. And the second time that it didn't come, he kind of
McKennie, the second one, yeah.
Yeah, he threw his hands up in the air like,
Hey,
look up, like.
Yeah. Find me.
And
I'm here.
and I think like those moments maybe
they
a
gotta
little bit
find
of being
him.
a young team, and also like I get
Greg.
it. I get the other.
Greg has to pull up those moments on tape and highlight those moments for those guys because they need to see Pulisic making those runs. Everybody needs to see each other making those types of runs because those are the ones that will create the goals. It worked for him at Chelsea. It worked for him in Champions League games.
Side of that mindset of like you're up 1-0 at a World Cup.
I know he didn't play in the final Champions League final. I thought Pulisic. I have to double check that, but I think he was available.
Like, let's not force things here. We're in control of this game. But they had those moments,
Yeah.
and it's Christian Pulisic making a run in behind. Like, you got to find that run.
Being a young team, Paul, not just that. I think that's the part of that is too a lot of the players not being big players at their own clubs, and not being in those on-field leadership roles where they take a game by the scruff of the neck. It's something that these guys aren't really used to doing.
Yes.
And I think you kind of saw that materialize a little bit. I don't want to make
I
too
mean,
much of that.
again,
I agree.
but like when we talk about this World Cup and we talk about these games, I mean, this game it's about those little margins, right? It's about those little moments of
You
execution.
can decide everything.
And you have a 1-0 lead. It didn't hold up because of a little moment, right? Where Gareth Bale sees the play developing, gets his legs in front of the ball, and Walker Zimmerman goes through him, right?
Yeah.
And that's it. That changes everything.
Correcting an error, Pulisic did play in the Champions League final. He got subbed in at the 66th minute for Timo Werner for Chelsea. Who's the coach? Just double check. Coach for Chelsea. Thomas Tuchel. He brought in Pulisic in the Champions League final. They won 1-0 against Manchester City in the 2021 UEFA Champions League final.
Everything. So I don't know. We're being critical here of the fact that they didn't seize those moments, but I think also it's what stood out to us was it wasn't as bad in the second half as we thought it was. That there were still moments and opportunities for them to get goals that they didn't. I thought they certainly could have made some adjustments defensively into what Wales was doing. Especially, Wales was looking to go direct down the channels, and I thought there were some moments the U.S. could have backed off, tried to win second balls. But when we watched it back,
There weren't that many of them.
It wasn't like it was like this constant, weakness that Wales was exploiting. It really wasn't.
And they did a good job of pressing to the point where they couldn't
was
play
a
them
good
more a lot
match.
of times when maybe they would look to.
Yeah.
So that in particular, I think was the biggest thing that I noticed in the second half that changed my thinking or my opinion from the initial watch. It's going to be interesting to see how this plays out against England. It should be a much different game.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. It's going to be different, right? It's hard to we were watching and trying to take notes on what do we take away from this game and into England, and it's hard to really take much other than the fact that the transition moments are.
Yeah.
It's like, what do you say? Be better, do better.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what they're
that is
going
what
to
you
be
say.
thinking.
To sort of
Execute better.
Circle this back around to a big picture.
Watch the film. Take to see pick your head up in those moments. Be aware of those moments.
Discussion that we've been having. Oh God, I don't know how long now, Paul, but this team is a bit limited. They're getting into good spaces in transition, and when they get there, the quality wasn't quite there.
Right.
And that's kind of the story. These players are talented, they're good, but they're a little bit unrefined and they're not all the way there yet. And that is what at least I've been saying. I think you've been saying
You don't need to do that. You don't
build up to this tournament.
You don't need to be refined. You don't look at what Japan was able to do. I mean, and if we're going to say that Saudi Arabia did it, look at what Saudi Arabia was able to do. I mean, you can put forward those types of effort. And really, America was one blown tackle away from us talking about them beating Wales 1-0.
As the main reason why, hey, this is going to be a dogfight for this team to get out of Group B. And we're certainly seeing that play out now.
Yeah, I mean, I think, one of the bigger issues has been kind of production in the final third against quality opponents, right? Like, that's been an issue. They have the wingers. They have midfielders that can win balls in midfield and help create these transition moments. They haven't had a finisher at the number 9, and Josh Sargent worked hard, but didn't really seize the moment. He
didn't get a ton of. He didn't get a ton of service.
But they just don't have that guy at that position.
Yeah,
and so you need your wingers to do it, and I'm sure people are listening to this being
and Pulisic and Weah did on the one play. They absolutely did it, and it was that watching that back. That was a great goal. On several levels. That finish by Weah, he made it look easy. It was not an easy or simple finish. He took it really well. Pulisic made the whole play. So they did it on the one play. And if there's one thing that gives me a little bit of, I think, hope heading into England, it's that maybe there will be more opportunities to have plays like that, those quick transition moments, where
Right.
not even transition,
And
but
recognize
those vertical
them.
moments when they go fast. That's when this team's at their best. And Wales, they sat.
And now that having played a game, their first World Cup game ever, maybe they're going to get better at recognizing some of those moments in those big games. And you better believe that Friday's going to be a very, very big game. Here's the thing. This first game was a very big game. I don't know how much more emotionally bigger it could get than England, but still having the England come second after this Wales match, which already was a huge opponent, I feel like they're braced for the emotions of this battle, of what this game could grow into. And they might not get caught up in the emotions for that very reason, because what happened in the very first game, I mean, like, that's where the emotions were spent and expounded, and you get to feel the world of the crowd. They're gonna be feeling like, oh, this is business all over again. This is gonna be just like Monday, and when they're on the field on Friday, and bam, they're gonna be making those connections that they might have been missing, and a little bit too much worried about the environment to be able to deal with. And as they settle in with their environment, play better soccer.
Back and they made it difficult. England, it's not going to be like that.
Yeah, and I mean, we'll talk about this here in the next segment, but I think, the other X factor for me, one of the big questions I have going
Harold's
into the
rectum
game is
damn near
who
killed him.
plays. And I think there's one name in particular that U.S. fans are going to be wondering about.
Who plays for
Gio-
England or who plays for the U.S.?
Gio Reyna.
Both. But
Okay.
I guess if they were talking about both, then it's two names that you're going to be wondering, are they on the field or not? One is obviously Harry
Harry
Kane.
Kane.
Both of them were born
Harry
in
Kane.
England.
And yeah, one of them is Harry Kane and one of them is Gio Reyna.
Yes.
Harry Kane and Gio Reyna,
Paul,
got
I
it.
think that's a pretty good way to take it into the next segment. But before we do that, any final stray thoughts that you want to get out there?
No, I mean, again, I was surprised by the way I felt after watching the game back. I had a much more
I felt very
pessimistic view of what happened in the
Really?
second half from the game
Initially.
itself.
I felt
initially,
good.
and coming out of the rewatch, I thought, okay, you know what, it wasn't that bad. The moments were still there, and Wales wasn't that dangerous, and
Yep.
and certainly Wales was much better in the second half than
Excuse
they
me.
were in the first. They were much
Pardon
more
me.
aggressive. I think they took more control.
They actually
of the
tried to
game.
get out of their own half.
They took more control of the game than they did at any point in the first half. But overall, 1-1 draw, not an awful result. But I thought, still watching it back, it's a disappointing result.
Well, yeah,
overall,
it's funny. You feel more positively about the performance, which in a way makes you feel worse about the result.
What is this?
Yeah. So I think that's it for me. I mean, I thought Tim Ream was good. I thought he was solid. I thought Serginho Dest was very disciplined, almost too disciplined. I would have maybe liked to see a little bit more from him in the attack. But if he's going to err
There
on
it
one
is.
side, err on the side that he erred.
This guy's
for
freaking me out, guys.
Tim Weah is really good at soccer. Also that. The goal was great, but the chance, the initial build-up to the Sargent header off the post, where Dest played him over the top, and he took the ball out of the air, one touch. Before it even hits the ground, he rips across into the middle and almost causes an own goal. Incredible play. He's a pretty special talent in his own right. All right, Paul. Let's take a break. We'll come back, talk about England.
Get me out of here.
Harry Kane. He's cringing.
I should have
well.
grabbed that.
Stay with us. Allocation disorder.
Harry Kane, what about it?
This show is sponsored by BetterHelp.
What
There are
about
times
it?
you figure out the cost 100% online.
Seeing the intensity, the passion, and the spectacle of the greatest tournament league match.
East Coast. How's that time zone breakdown? Gonna be a much different game than what we saw against Wales. England, of course, the group favorites. Nothing that happened on the first match day of Group B
I'll leave that
changed
there.
that. England went out and beat Iran 6-2. We didn't get a chance to watch that game in full because we were
Iran.
running around ahead of the U.S.
They're
game.
going to have a lot to prove.
We have watched bits and pieces. We've seen
against
all the
Wales. They
goals.
got to do something.
How much can we really take away from that game, do you think?
Dude, they're
I
clicking.
mean, not too much. Some of the goals, the defending was so poor from Iran on some of those goals
Yes.
that you hope that the U.S. would not have those same problems, that they are able to close
It
people
would be
down?
strange if they
Yeah,
did,
but the
if they
goals
just
that
decided to, hey,
how about the
Bukayo
goals that
Saka,
England
here's a
let
yard
up
in the
against
box.
Iran?
Just
like,
have that for
were
like
those
6
mental
seconds.
lapses,
then,
or
then
were
go ahead and
those
shoot. That's fine. I
or
don't
were
think the
those
US
cracks in the wall that we're seeing? I mean, the goals that England led up to Iran were not good goals. They were great goals for Iran, but how they led, what led to them occurring, and the amount of control that England was influencing that game, it didn't make sense. And so, like, those cracks are there, and maybe those cracks are there in their best game too for England against USA.
do that.
Yeah, I mean, what struck me is that the quality of England's players is exactly what we thought it was. Like, they're very, very, very good players. And
Okay, Denny Green.
if you give them space, they're going to beat. They're going
If
to
you
beat
let
you.
if you let him off the hook,
Yeah, I mean, I think back, Sam. I'm thinking a lot of Wales because we just watched the game again. But there were a few moments in the second half where Wales was, taking advantage of the space that was opening up in the game. It was, back and forth, especially after the goal. And
after the equalizer.
There were a couple
get
times
that?
where it was 1v1 in space. Serginho Dest at one point made a play. Tyler Adams recovered after Dest made the tackle. There was another moment where Tim Ream was in space one-on-one. Like, you don't want to get into those situations too often against England. It's a little bit different,
There we go.
quality level there.
Absolutely.
So, I don't want
I
to
can't
see
use it.
Raheem Sterling or Saka going one-on-one at U.S. fullbacks.
Leave
You
it.
just don't want that to happen. If you do see that happening, it's
Dangerous.
it's a situation
a
that
little
makes England
scarier.
happy.
Yeah.
It makes England happy. So I
Yeah.
think the U.S. is just going to have to be a little bit more disciplined defensively in those transition moments. The midfielders are going to have to be very aware of their spacing. I think we're going to be talking a lot more after the England game about how the midfield played defensively than we are right now post Wales.
Because they weren't asked to do that much.
Right.
Yeah.
And in this game, they're going to be asked to do a lot. It's going to be a much different challenge for this U.S. team. They're not going to have the ball as much, certainly not as much as they did in the first half when they were up above 66% possession.
I think at a certain point they had like 78% or something like that.
It was insane. And so I just think, I think it's going to be kind of a
Bullets.
difficult transition game to game here because I don't know.
Stylistically,
Yes,
wildly.
absolutely.
Yeah, I don't know how much you can take away from your own performance against Wales that will apply here, other than like you need to be more ruthless when you have these moments in transition.
No, there's
because they're going to be fewer than you got against Wales.
Paul, there's loads you could take away from the game with Wales and bring into this game. First off, you played against a premiership level side in Wales. You know who you're going against? Fucking premiership in England. So you have, but yes, the bench is way deeper. It's way deeper than anybody. It's gonna be one of the most difficult tests this team's had to deal with. But this team has also beaten some very difficult teams. Brazil in the past. This team has beat difficult. Not this team, not this iteration of the team, not these players, but this team is capable. And when they believe, and right now the belief is actually there. I think that after what they did against Wales, they are buying into Greg right now. The most that they have ever bought into Greg. And that's the best thing that can be said about the U.S. men's national team. And if they're buying into Greg Berhalter that much, there's a decent chance that they could do something. There's a decent chance that the England players are not buying into Gareth Southgate. It doesn't seem like there's evidence to support that because, I mean, they just won 6-2. They won really, really well. Excuse me, buddy. I don't need your guff. No wolves in this zone, please. But that's what I'm saying. Like, you're saying that there's not a lot to bring into this next game. I dispute that. I think that there's so much from this game with Wales that you're gonna be able to bring in the next game. You guys stopped debating with Gareth Bale. Who on the English team is their Gareth Bale? Do they have anybody as great as Gareth Bale? No, they don't. They have a lot of great players. Harry Kane, but none as great as what Gareth Bale was, maybe. And maybe that's what I said was. There it was. So I think Paul needs to recognize that, though. So much to be able to bring. What do you guys think in the comments? What do you guys think that the team could bring in from that Wales game into this England game that Paul's dismissing?
Wales, and you're going to have to be very, very disciplined defensively.
Yep. And it's unclear as of now if Kane, England's striker, Golden Boot winner at the 2018 World Cup, will be available. He picked up an ankle injury.
But it seems like he will
medical
be.
Scans. By the time you're listening to this podcast, those scans might be out, and we might have a clearer idea.
I don't have
But
any
right
idea
now,
on those
we're
scans
unsure
right now.
whether or not he's going to be able to start or even play on Friday nights. If he can't go, probably Marcus Rashford coming in at number 9.
Yeah, I think, it's pretty much down to Callum Wilson or Marcus Rashford. I think it would be Rashford.
Rashford's a great
Either
fill-in.
way, it's a different look. We'll see. I mean,
It's an
Harry
incre-
Kane
it's-
took
it's
part in
even
some
s-
regen sessions.
it might even be
stayed
as
in
scary.
the game after he hurt his ankle, but he's had issues with his
It's
ankle before.
arguably as
I think
scary
they're
as
gonna
Kane.
be
Marcus
tough
Rashford
against
presents a
Kane,
different-
and England is thinking big picture.
a different problem to solve. He's so much faster. He just the way he takes it to you, where Kane is more of that hold-up striker, that primary target
here.
man.
They're not thinking just about this USA game. This is a team that really believes they can win a World Cup.
Right.
So they have to approach any injury in that way. And so, look, if Harry Kane's not on the field, England, that's not a good thing for England. It's like let's not go out of control here and be like, oh, like this is a positive for the US. Like, yeah, it's a positive for the U.S. marginally, right? Like, they're going to get a little bit worse. But Marcus Rashford presents a whole different set of issues, especially with the U.S.
Yes.
center back pairing, the one that started against Wales.
Hey,
These are world-class players. I mean, Marcus Rashford is really, really good.
Yes.
So it's like, I don't want to talk about this like it's like a game changer. I think the difference is
Harry Kane, you can maybe just add one more really.
Right. And I think also Harry Kane, I think Marcus Rashford looks to get in behind the back line a little bit more often than Harry Kane does. And so it presents that challenge against two center backs who I would say, like, you don't want.
They're not the fastest in the world.
Yeah, you don't want those foot races, right? And I think you'll have more of those potential races against Rashford, which is not good. Yeah. But Harry Kane is still Harry Kane. So this is what we're talking about with playing England at a World Cup. I mean, just really, really, really good soccer players up and down the starting lineup and coming off the bench. It doesn't get better for you,
Jude Bellingham was really impressive in the Iran.
Yeah,
Such
he
a
looked
wonderful
really
player.
good.
Again, we're talking about these things. It's
They
like,
have
okay,
Phil Foden and Jack Grealish coming off the bench.
I know.
There's more
And
pace.
Rashford.
There's more pace on the bench now coming off. If Harry Kane's not playing, you're bringing more pace onto the field.
Right.
They could do the same thing at the winger spot.
Yeah.
I mean, they can bring pace from any angle they want at any time. With guys like
Even Harry Maguire was
Foden
good the other day.
Harry, I know. Even Harry, I said that too.
I just think
Even Harry Maguire is going to be just like
we're not.
way better than
I'm
people
not
expect.
opening up opportunities.
You're going to be
for
thinking,
you
it's
to
like,
go into
Manchester
Harry
United.
Maguire.
I love Harry Maguire.
I just think it's going to be interesting because the conversation, obviously, and deservedly so, will be around Harry Kane's availability. But I look at it and I'm like, man, I'm a huge fan of Marcus Rashford as a player, and I think he presents different problems and more problems maybe matchup-wise for the U.S.
Yeah, but the biggest thing is that Kane is better in the box. He's a better finisher. And,
Yes,
and
for sure.
He's going to bury 9 out of 10, and
Yeah.
Rashford might do 7.
That's the thing. Is like I can't really say it's better or worse for the U.S. Right?
And Rashford on his day,
maybe, but it's
Rashford on
in
his
terms
day
of the
is
style, you mentioned the midfield, and
unstoppable.
they're going to be asked to do a lot more
We need to have
defensively
a
than they were
career day
against
from
Wales.
Christian
That's
Pulisic.
certainly true. I think Yunus Musa needs to be a lot better than he was against Wales in a few different ways. But again, talking about that verticality, and I think there's going to be opportunities there against England in that way. Are there any comps you can think of for this team or a game that they've played in the past? Obviously, the level of talent will be a lot different than anything they saw in qualifying. But even just in terms of how the midfield looked,
Right.
winning a lot of duels potentially, looking to break forward quickly, is there anything you would draw a comparison to?
I mean, I don't think so, because this isn't even like if you think about what this team has faced. they really haven't had these types of tests. I mean, the best tests with this U.S. group recently has been the games against Mexico. And those games do open up and they do create moments where the midfield has to win balls and get vertical
Nations
quickly.
League final in particular, but that was a year and a half ago
the quality, the difference between England and
Oh my
Mexico is
gosh.
substantial,
Huge.
especially in the
What is
final
this?
third. I mean,
Huge.
like, think about the names
We
just
saw it.
mentioned.
We saw it last night, Paul, at the game for
Yeah,
Mexico
it's-
Poland.
I mean, it's you take Chucky, but then now add quality finishers in the box.
yeah,
right?
and midfielders who actually arrive into the box.
Right. So, I mean, again, you think about the pace on the outside with guys like whether it's Foden or whether it's Saka or whether it's Grealish or whether it's Rashford or,
Yeah.
keep going down the list. I mean, they're
Sterling.
Sterling. They're going to be getting in behind the back line constantly. They're going to be looking to play those balls in behind the back line constantly. And then if you have Harry Kane in the middle of the box that can finish, or if you've got Rashford, I mean, it's just like world-class levels.
Yeah.
This is a totally different challenge than what this U.S. team has faced. I think you hope that they lean a little bit on their club experiences here because, Anthony Robinson played against
They have
Arsenal.
faced these
each other.
guys.
I talked
They
to
have
him
faced
about it.
these guys.
He
All right, where are they
knows
shooting from?
who he's going to come up against. Tim Ream plays
Same
in the
thing.
Premier League.
Dest
And-
has played against a lot of these guys in Champions League.
Right. And you go down the list in
fuck, dude,
midfield
behind.
too.
They're
McKennie
everywhere.
has
I'm
played
getting
Champions
ding,
League.
ding,
Adams
ding,
plays in the
ding,
Premier
ding,
League.
Yeah,
ding.
and has
Pulisic
played
is
Champions League.
obviously-
Stupid.
Yunus Musa maybe not as much, but he plays in La Liga.
He's not going to be overawed with these guys. He grew up playing with some
Right.
of them.
Exactly. So that's where I think
I agree.
you hope that this U.S. team draws from.
I actually, like, in a very weird way, feel
Right.
almost a little bit better about this game for the U.S. than I did about the opener.
Really?
Just because I think this U.S. team in
I felt the
particular and
opposite,
the U.S.
for
team
sure.
historically usually
regardless
play
of the
well when
result.
they're an underdog. They will be in this game. That chip on the shoulder will develop. And I think, they're not good when they're dominant with the ball. They struggle to break teams down in possession. We saw that against Wales. We've seen it a million times in the past. They're good in transition. They're good in midfield and winning duels. England will be hugely challenging in a million different ways. It's not going to be Mexico 2-0 in
He's going
Cincinnati when the U.S. dominated physically in midfield. It's not that kind of midfield. It's not Ache or Andres Guardado in there. It's Rice and Bellingham and Mason Mount or maybe some other guys that didn't play against Iran who are just as talented and just as athletic.
Right.
So it's going to be a different kind of challenge, but I think the style of game is one that's a little bit suited for the U.S. That being said, England has all that skill, and if the U.S. is going to get a result,
I don't know if it's suited
gonna
towards the
require
US, but I like that the
Herculean
US has
effort
got their
and really
emotions
good
out
performances from
in that first
basically
game.
everybody.
I think that this
Yeah,
game is the
I
emotional game
think-
for England. England's going to have a lot of more emotions going in this game than I think the U.S. will, because I think that Wales game was this is their first World Cup game. How do you top that?
I think going into this tournament,
England,
I felt
US
the
is how
same
you
way you
top
just
that.
talked about, like that the style of game against England would suit this U.S. team better, and that that could play into their hands in this game, and maybe it will. But when you sit down like
but
we are
England
now,
can play that same style, and they're more talented.
well, that's the thing is like
Yeah.
when you sit down and you start analyzing this England team, you start thinking about the game, the players that they're matched up against, you start to realize just how good England is talent-wise.
Yeah.
And the quality of their options in the final third.
Yes, their quality of options
the
are just
conversation
incredible.
Was like Harry Kane's out, and let's talk about the options here. And let's say that you're starting Saka. That means Phil Foden's on the bench. Jack Grealish came
I mean,
off the
we did
bench.
an exercise, Paul.
Oh.
If you could combine the U.S. and England and pick a starting 11, what would it look like? And we both picked 11 England players.
Yeah, I mean, because
11.
realistically, that's just the reality here. And
Realistically,
even
that's
like
what
with someone
USA
like
is up
Christian Pulisic,
against.
Think about where he falls on the depth chart at the winger spot for England. It's very similar to the Chelsea situation, right?
Very similar to the
Where
Chelsea
where it's
situation,
like,
wow.
okay, like, does he start over Sterling? No, he doesn't. And
He
then
might not even make the team.
you go
for
over
England.
that roster, right? So
Foden,
right.
Grealish, Sterling,
Saka.
Rashford, Saka. Is Pulisic gonna make the team? Maybe.
He might not
Coach's
even make the
preference though.
team.
He ain't gonna be starting.
Yeah. So I mean that to me it comes down to one of these games where you're at a World Cup, you're on a massive stage. You've got these young players who I think tend also
Man,
to elevate
I'm
on these
so
bigger stages.
Paul, I'm so fired up right now. Man, England, USA, this is it. This is
Let's
it. This is like the
go.
biggest
Let's go,
kind of game
guys.
for American soccer. possible.
fans.
World Cup, Black Friday, incredible opportunity. I feel like I could run through a wall, and we're just sitting here at a kitchen table talking about the game. I cannot even imagine how the players feel. Let's take a quick break. We're going to come back. We just focused a lot on England. We're going to flip it, focus on the U.S., maybe talk about some lineups potentially. And
If you guys want to check that out, go listen to USA versus England preview on allocation disorder, part of the Apple Podcast Network, and I think other places too. Greatly appreciate Paul and Sam. They've been on the show before here on Spit and Fire. It's awesome having them on. But really enjoyed their perspective, getting a little preview for England, USA, and excited to see what is in store for us on Friday. What do you guys think, guys? Win, loss, tie for America? Do you think we have even a chance, even a remote chance to do anything against England? I think we do. I absolutely do think we do. With all the results and things that we've seen over these past few group games, how can we not believe, especially with the result that they got against Wales? Chat, thank you for watching Spit and Fire. Greatly appreciate it. Thanks for watching us here. Kick that like button. Subscribe for more Spit and Fire. Hit the bell icon to get notified of our live streams. Happy Thanksgiving. Have a happy holiday. I think I will be live. I'm pretty sure I'll be live on Friday at 1, just a little bit before 1 for England taking on USA. I might not be. I have to work out logistics. I might not be, so don't quote me on that. But you'll definitely have the alerts out here. So, guys, hopefully you guys are excited about that. If we're taking a look at betting, just real quick before I go, you got Switzerland